All right, Mariana, let's keep the conversation going. And let's talk about challenges. So, what challenges does Alexander Hamilton encounter in his career that are first gen coded, in your opinion?
I love this question because I think especially when we see after Alexander Hamilton arrives in the colonies, he starts to learn very quickly whose opinions are valued,
Mm,
and he bumps up against the unwritten rules of the elite. So I think what we start to see very early in the show is that most of Hamilton's first gen challenges were not the result of being an immigrant. It was more being raised a poor child of the working class.
mm.
And the majority of issues that first gens experience are also a direct result of class bias. So when we listen to song 2 of the score, Aaron Burr, Sir,
Mm-hmm.
this is their first encounter. It's after already, they've had their education and they're now, starting to mingle in the professional realm. So he approaches Burr when he meets him and he says, I've heard of you. Specifically in the score, he says, I wanted to do what you did, graduate into, then join the revolution. He looked at me like I was stupid. I'm not stupid. He's referring to the bursar of Princeton, approached with this request. So he asks Burr, so how'd you do it? How'd you graduate so fast? And Burr's reply is, it was my parents' dying wish before they passed. So what do we learn here? Burr is a Nepo baby.
Yes.
His father was actually the second president of Princeton University. And Hamilton actually did not end up graduating from Princeton. He ended up attending King's College, which is now known as Columbia University. But I think it's notable here in the reply when Hamilton, responds to this information that Burr has shared. He picks up on the commonality that they share in orphans before he picks up on the privilege.
This is fascinating. I had never stopped to think about that. Yeah, it's like, I just told you I'm rich. And you're like, oh, you're an orphan. I'm an orphan too.
Yes. And to me, this hit different because in my, work with first gens and drawing from my own first gen experience, first generation professionals and college students, they're very compassionate to struggle. And we tend to really be able to identify what somebody else might be going through. And it's why I am a big champion of saying that first gen professionals are our next 21st century human-centered leaders. It's that empathy. It is that ability to see things from different perspectives because you know what it's like to really be down and out. I think that this is notable in the context of the show because, again, like I said in the first episode, we have an intense drive to overcome adversity because of the struggles that we've encountered.
Yep.
And we are extremely resourceful and have a dedicated work ethic because of it. So speaking of work ethic, this is where Alexander also starts to bump up against the unwritten rules of the elite. So I think probably one of the more recognizable leitmotifs of the show, and for those who aren't familiar with kind of the musical lexicon, a leitmotif in a score is a recurring theme or phrase. So you'll probably recognize this one, Miguel, that Burr offers him some advice. He says, while we're talking, let me offer you some free advice.
Free advice. Talk
what was the free advice?
less.
Yes. And
smile more.
More, exactly.
Don't let them know of what you're against or what you're for.
I don't have to say it. You know it, right? So what is being unsaid here are the unwritten rules. And specifically, we're talking about the unwritten rules of schmoozing and compliance. So at this point, I have to give a shout out to my friend and esteemed colleague, Dr. Anna Kalschmidt, who is a leading researcher on the unwritten rules of work for people from class backgrounds. And the unwritten rules of white-collar work culture are based on the white male norms of the upper elite, centered in wealth and access to power. So when we see, Burr giving this advice, Hamilton is getting schooled in the unwritten rules of elite society. Yeah. Talk less, smile more is a leitmotif that's repeated throughout the show. And these things are not intuitive or familiar when you're coming from a working class household. When you're raised upper middle class or higher, you're used to seeing, people talk about their professional work or their challenges. Maybe you've been to your parents' office, or you have access to their colleagues and their networks, right? Like that's something that's just kind of built into your environment where, first gens don't have that. We're kind of learning as we go. So two of the most challenging unwritten rules for first gens specifically are the rules of schmoozing and compliance. And we see both here. When Burr says talk less, that's compliance. And I think most of us, even if you're not first gen, can relate to the real life example of being in environments of high control that say, collaboration is highly valued, but really what they're looking for is compliance and agreement. That's what's actually expected and rewarded. And I see you're kind of nodding your head with that.
I am nodding. Yeah.
So that's there. But for me, the smile more was what really resonated, because that's schmoozing. And in her book coming out later this year, Dr. Kalschmidt shares why this is so challenging for first gens. It's because it creates an inner conflict of integrity that can feel like a betrayal of class. You have to fawn over someone who in different circumstances might look down on them for being part of the working class.
Wow.
So it's, and even if that isn't the intention of the other party, that feeling of, well, why do I have to do this? If it feels inauthentic. It's not something that you would feel like you would do in any other scenario.
That's right. I remember HamilTEN actually responds to Burr saying, "You can't be serious. I feel like you're just hurting me right now. I mean, you're telling me to not be who I am."
It's so true. I'm so glad you brought that up, because it leads perfectly into the second reason, where getting ahead by schmoozing, i.e. networking, this is kind of falls under that header. It doesn't feel like work to a lot of first gen professionals.
Yeah.
Digging in, working long hours, breaking a sweat, leaving sore, leaving exhausted. That's work. Having a day full of back-to-back meetings, it's just like, where's the work? When do we actually get to prove our skills, right? And this is why networking and things like that can feel so weird to many of us. I'll never forget, I listened to the Pivot podcast a lot. I really like Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway. And he said something that resonated with me that I've never forgotten, which is the reason for college is to set the ground to get ahead career-wise and economically. And for first gens, we think that's, okay, we got to take as many classes as possible. We have to days. We got to study, instead of party. We got to, join as many extracurriculars. Basically, we have to create something that no employer would say no to. He's like, you know how the rich kids do it? They just make friends with other rich kids they don't already know. And that gives them better chances of gaining access to privileged information and opportunities, instead of working to study your ass off and getting all those straight A's. I mean, that's great too, but there's another way. And rich kids usually choose the easier option.
Wow.
So
what a powerful lesson.
Yeah. I mean, it's I understand that there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
But I just felt like that was something that, had I known that, I might have treated my college years a little differently.
Wow. That's all I can say. Mariana, I feel like you gave us enough to reflect on with only this one question. I don't know how you did it, but you did. Is there a call to action for us out of everything that you shared today when it comes to first-gen professionals? And I think there is something about code switching, wearing the mask, not being your true authentic self, and the impact it has on mental health, physical health, and even your ability to actually deliver, because the amount of energy and time you spend just holding the mask is just preventing you from being your best version. So just wanted to mention it out there before I hand the mic over to you to leave us with a call to action for the second episode of the series of 3.
I'd be happy to. So again, speaking to leaders, you are more than likely overseeing first gens on your team. So to help demystify the unwritten rules, start from day one. Start from new employee onboarding. Make it a point to reduce using corporate jargon off the bat. Refrain from using acronyms that may be, part of the cultural lexicon at day to day, but if you're brand new and, this is your first time in this environment, it can be very alienating to talk like that. So instead, use accessible language that encourages everybody to speak up regardless of their background, and really identify and name what is being unsaid in the culture that they're still going to be judged and evaluated on.
Folks, with that, we close episode number 2 out of 3 of this series that are leading us into Hispanic Heritage Month and celebrating the 10th anniversary of the musical Hamilton. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening. Take care and talk soon.